Hello, all, and welcome back to a Warlock Sanctum Storyteller interview. Today we're talking to Devlin. Devlin, did you want to say hi to everyone?
Hello. Yeah, I'm Devlin Kane. I was on here formerly as Bear the Bard. Um, been doing this for a few years now.
Yeah, yeah. So that gets into our first question. How long have you been doing paid storytelling, and how long have you been into RPGs in general?
Paid storytelling about 4 years now, coming on 4 years.
Nice.
Um, I've been playing tabletops 20 this year.
Nice. Nice. All right. So when you run games, what would you say your two biggest strengths are that draw people in?
I tend to have a very. I usually try to figure out what the players are bringing to the table, and then I will write around that. Trying to find a way to tie them into whatever it is that I'm working on, things like that, to make the interactions a little bit more uh, fulfilling, I suppose, meaningful. While also I am very improvisational. So in addition to the writing and prep work that I do, I have strengthened my improv a bit so that I can provide more organic responses in a quick fashion to whatever they introduce, because there's no way to fully prepare for what they're going to bring to the table.
Fair. Any tools or leading questions that you kind of use as standard for those techniques?
Yeah, I tend to ask things like, what kind of outcomes, or what is something that you are wanting or expecting to come up with the story that we're moving into, and that gives me an idea of their ambition for the character, things along that line. um, I also usually do like a session zero and try to get very involved with creating their characters and things like that, writing whatever they add into the setting. um, we usually do a pretty in-depth conversation at session zero, trying to get everything ironed out before getting into play, so that I can flesh out the writing a little more.
Fair enough. Moving on to our next question. What are your two favorite systems to run? Big question.
Yeah, for the longest time it was D&D, but I found myself really enjoying here lately. I think my favorites are probably Vampire Masquerade and Werewolf the Apocalypse, 5th edition. Those have
Interesting.
been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed them a lot.
Between those two systems, what's one of your favorite mechanics or subsystems that you find the players get a good use out of?
For Vampire, I really enjoy uh, the hunger mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
um, Browsing the blood in order to possibly increase your hunger and humanity, and the way they tie into each other.
Mm-hmm.
It really creates, once they get like so high on their hunger tracker, watching the players really kind of sweat and like decide whether or not they want to push that a little further to get something they done accomplished. I really like the way it forces some level of like resource management, but in a way that's not just, oh, I just can't do anything anymore. Now it's, you can continue doing it, but there's a cost potentially. I really like the way they layered that out.
Yeah,
Um,
I've heard that's pretty
for,
controversial mechanic across the player base. Some people either seem to love it or hate it. I haven't seen many people be like, hunger dice.
yeah, that's fair. Very fair. I will say that was one thing that irritated. Like, I do still love werewolf, and I am leaning toward that a little over vampire at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt like they do utilize a similar mechanic with rage.
Oh, okay. I have not
Yeah,
picked up W5 yet, so I do not know the system inside and out. Did anything you want to share with people?
yeah. It's They have kind of much like with V5, they really streamlined a lot of the content from like the previous editions. Trying to create like this sense of we have hit the apocalypse. We're at the end of the world. Everything's much more watered down than it was like 20 years ago.
No, okay. Okay, so we're there.
And yeah, we are. It very much is like we are at the end of things. It's like if you open up the book, it's like guy is dead. Are you going to do anything about it? Kind of thing. Like it's
Oh, yeah, not mincing
yeah.
words. Amazing. All right, so
No,
continue. Go ahead.
yeah,
Continuing on. In
yeah.
the kind of era of online gaming, what virtual tabletop do you prefer to use, if any? Like what tech?
I love Foundry Virtual Tabletop.
Have you tried others, or is
Um,
that just where first thing
I
worked out great?
tried. I did try Roll20. Roll20, it's really cool, but I can get much of the functions from Roll20 without like the console subscription versus the one-time payment for Foundry. So I ended up staying there. I have used Albert Rodeo.
Mm-hmm.
It is really, at least it was. I know they've done an update to it recently. I haven't used it since the big update, but it was really good. Like if I needed to throw a map together in a pinch for a game that was a session that was originally going to probably be mostly theater of the mind kind of thing.
All right.
Um, those are probably the only ones I've really tried. Except I did try Fablecraft, but that's a game that has its own thing built into it.
Fair. So you're the first one I've known as a paid storyteller who used both V5 and W5, but it's also been a year since we've done any of these. Do you tie your stories together between troops, or is like each one its own independent world? And why?
To an extent, I do try to keep them relatively separate, but I do have it usually tying into the same setting. So they have their own different things that they're dealing with, but like the games that I'm running right now are set in Knoxville, Tennessee, at the base of like the Smoky Mountains off of Appalachia. Um, I have like the werewolves that basically mostly operate within the national park, and then you have the kindred that are mostly operating in little cities in the surrounding areas. Um, I do have them cross into each other, but my primary settings, Knoxville and the Smoky Mountains, I tend to keep those separate, and then they
Okay,
have their own little subsects of each other they might encounter.
neat. So, like shared worlds, shared NPCs, but maybe not the players ever truly interacting.
Not so much. However, things that the players might do will have an impact on the setting and will
Okay,
be felt in the other tables.
very cool. Shared worlds are fairly interesting for the most part, and I've had some people very much like the hunger mechanic. Some people are like, "This is great," and some people are like, "Oh no, never." Um, but carrying on. Say you have a new group who wants to start tonight. They want to play in about 4 hours. They don't want to play D&D. What system do you grab for a one shot to hook them in?
Probably, actually, probably the One Ring
Okay.
by Free League. It is a system set for like Lord of the Rings, Middle Earth. It's relatively new, but it comes with like you have like the pre-made characters. It's pretty simple to get into for the most part. I've already got a bunch of digital tools that I can use to kind of move into things. Um, I could set up a one shot for that pretty quickly, I think, and it has kind of like the fantasy. It's like a low magic fantasy element of like Lord of the Rings, with still having like the fantasy elements that people enjoy, like the different species and like magical encounters and the concept of like good and evil, and then you have the more harsh mechanics of like this isn't D&D where uh your character can get bitten by a dragon and walk away from it just fine. It's you still have like the painful consequences of a bad die roll, kind of similar like you would in like World of Darkness.
Very cool. All right. So you have a new GM who wants to move from maybe not a new GM in the sense of running games, but wants to move
Mhm.
from uh, running groups for their friends and get into paid storytelling. What piece of advice would you offer?
Don't get too much in your head about it. Um, that's the quickest way to talk yourself out of just about anything, and it is a slow process.
Fair enough. All right, well, that's most of the questions we have for today. Is there anything you want to plug or anything you're working on that's coming up? Or, some seats at the table that you're trying to fill?
I do actually have a couple tables that I am currently getting ready to run. I have a new vampire game set in Knoxville called Blood in the Valley that's going to be kicking off soon. That's mostly going to be involving like a investigative story regarding a series of murders, all that fun stuff.
Neat.
Um, I do have another werewolf game coming out as well, Rage Across the Smoky Mountains, and then I have a One Ring game called Defenders of the North, where rather than like following the events of like Lord of the Rings and stuff, this is more about what's happening north of Rivendell.
All right. And for
Is on that one.
those watching and interesting, we'll include the links below to these tables to sign up. And with that, Devlin, it's been good having you. Any last shout outs you want to give before we say goodbye?
Um, no, I think I'm good. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming out. It's been good having you, and we will see everyone next time. Bye for now.